Portrait street photography, for the sake of a better word, was something that I'd never considered. When I used to do fashion advertising, you only had a camera in your hand when you were working. When you weren't working, you didn't. It was just a tool for the job. I stopped working in that business for, I'd say, about mid-90s maybe, or early 90s. I stopped and I did a whole bunch of other jobs. I worked on a ship, I worked on construction sites, worked with various different charities on different projects around the world. And during that period, I didn't have a camera with me. Some of the most exciting and beautiful things that I'd ever seen, like being on a ship and seeing a whale in the middle of the South Atlantic. I know it would only be a picture of a whale, but still, I didn't have a camera, and I missed out on a whole bunch of stuff. I got back here, and I was petrified of digital photography, because I come from a long line of analog photographers. And analog photography I could get my head around relatively easy. This digital stuff involved a computer, all kinds of things that I didn't think that I was going to be capable to use. But I managed to get over that. And then when I got my first digital camera, it just seemed like the whole world of photography turned upside down for me at that point, because I didn't have to buy film, I didn't have to develop contact sheets. There's lots of things that I didn't have to do, and I could see instantly what was going on. Digital cameras were the sort of things that people who started in the 70s, like me, dreamt of. Just the idea that you can take a picture and see it immediately, and because digital didn't exist, we all used lots of Polaroid, and now there isn't any Polaroid left, it's all dried up. But I got more and more comfortable with shooting in the street. One of the things that is difficult for me in the street is that I'm a complete coward. So I'm afraid of getting caught if I point a camera at somebody's face. And in my head, I'm talking my way out of the argument we're having before I've even pressed the shutter. Once a year, I get busted when I'm taking pictures, and once a year is kind of enough because the shame is just so huge when someone knows you've taken a picture of their kid. I think one of the things that I do the most when I'm in those situations, which I still haven't mastered, is I shoot from the hip a lot. And shooting from the hip is incredibly difficult. It's really hard. I chop people's heads off, I chop their legs off. Occasionally I'll get a shot, but 9 times out of 10 I completely miss it. But because I'm unable to point my camera at somebody's face in the street, then that's the price that I have to pay. Thus, I have to shoot a lot more frames in order to get something that's going to work. Portrait-wise, now we're seeing some, I guess, what do you call them? I'm a bit confused between, is that street photography? Okay, is that street photography? No, that's inside a mosque photography. Is that street photography? Well, there was a canopy, I'm not sure about that. That was in the street. I find it difficult to kind of differentiate between people I shoot in the street and people I shoot in my studio or in my living room. And I think street photography is a really poor description of what we do in the street when we're taking pictures. Definitely a bit of street photography. The neighbourhood where I live is Ladbroke Grove. Right next to Portobello Road. One of the advantages is that every single day of the week, Portobello Road's got something happening in it. There's people there. I've been photographing Portobello Road for 15 years, possibly. All of these people are from Portobello Road. But it's getting harder and harder for me now to photograph in that street because I can't see it anymore. I can't, one day just bleeds into the next day. And I'm carrying a camera and I'll think, oh yeah, that might be a shot. And then, oh no, I did that shot the other day, I've done that one. And because I shoot a lot of people in Portobello, what tends to happen is I'm sitting looking at the photographs of the day. My favourite way to get faces is to use a long lens, so I can be as far away as I possibly can, so I don't get caught. And on Saturdays, it's great to use a long lens. I use a 300mm lens on a Saturday in the middle of Portobello Road. And people are so far away that they're really not sure. Is he pointing that camera at me? They're really not sure. But what happens is I'll go home and I'll look at the pictures, and I may stay with 2 or 3 pictures for the whole weekend working out what I'm going to do with them or how they are. And I'll walk down Portobello Road and I'll think, I know you. I must know you. I've been looking at your face, but hi. And they kind of look at me like I'm some kind of thing. Because I've been staring at their face in the computer for ages. And, you know, and I don't know whether I know them or whether or not I took a sneaky picture of them. As I said, I used to do it for a living. And if you're lucky, it's a very lucrative living. But I think things have changed a little bit since I started. I think there's a lot more people taking photographs now. There's a lot more people with cameras. I'm not seeing lots of great pictures, but I know lots and lots of cameras are being sold. Maybe I'm kind of looking in the wrong place, but I'm not seeing that much good work appear yet. I guess it will do at some point. For me, photography's turned into something quite strange. It's gone beyond an obsession with me now. It's all I pretty much think about, and all I do is I'm either building lights, putting different lenses on cameras with gaffer tape, trying to reinvent photography and landing on my arse 9 times out of 10. But I do like to experiment and try things out. And one of my favourite things to do is to use homemade lights, because I don't think you need a lot of money when it comes to photography. If you've got the camera I've got with me now is about 7 or 8 years old. It's a Sony Nex 5. It's like a toy, but it works perfectly. It does, it does exactly what I ask it to do. Taking portraits to a large extent is about casting. I think the thing, if anything, that makes my pictures work is the casting, the people who are actually in the pictures. And it's really hard to project an idea onto someone's face. For me, I have no plan before I start of what I'm going to do, and it slowly kind of develops. It develops into something. All against the wall with a flash on top of the camera. But what you see is the casting, you see the people that are there. Let me see. This girl works in my local coffee shop, but she doesn't anymore. This guy appeared out of the blue with his funny nose and we shot him in the kitchen. This guy here is a poet and a writer. That's another picture of him. All of these pictures are kind of done in the most simple way that I possibly can. I use flash quite a lot, but I tend to use flash on curly wire. I haven't got that many cameras that can transmit and then catch it and do all those kind of things, so I just have a curly wire and hold it above whatever I'm shooting. 90% of the portraits that are here were shot indoors. They were shot in my flat. The living room in my flat is a studio for all intents and purposes. And I know exactly when the light's going to come into the window, I know exactly where it's going to go, I know exactly what that particular light is going to do. So in my hallway, without even thinking about it, I know what the exposure is. I know it's a 60th at 2.8 100 ASA in my hallway. And I can almost guarantee that I'm going to get great exposures straight away. There's an obsession that you may notice here of hands. I'm not quite sure what it is about hands. I think they have a character of their own, and I think you can read a lot from somebody's hands. Trying to get hands right is really hard, because trying to get the right hands is really hard. So I end up photographing a lot of different people's hands in the hope that I'm going to get the ones that I want, the shape, the way it falls. Hands again. Hands again. This slide, oh, lo and behold, it's hands again. But there's a lot of fun can be had with hands. There's lots of different ways of playing with hands. And for some reason I just become very attracted to hands and the shapes that they make. Whenever I do a portrait, I'll always look around. If I'm doing a headshot for somebody, I'll look at the rest of their body to see if there's anything else that I can use to my advantage, see what their hands are like, kind of see how they sit, how they bend. Shooting somebody as soon as they walk through the door, I generally get I get my frame that I want in about the third or fourth time I press the shutter. But I will convince myself I need to shoot another 200 pictures, just in case. And it's 200 pictures that look exactly the same. When I'm out and about in the street, it's generally one frame, I got it or I didn't. This was when I was totally obsessed with Saul Leiter, and spent all of my days trying to find ways of copying his colour, which I could never do. But I admit that I tried. Colour's a new thing for me. The majority of work I've done has been in black and white. I'm comfortable with black and white, I know where I am. And colour terrifies me. But because I work for myself and I'm my own client, I can kind of photograph whatever I want without having to get someone else's permission or without to get it okayed by somebody else. This girl, the last girl that was up there, she came to visit with somebody else who was supposed to be shot, and we ended up shooting her instead. I have a camera with me all the time. That's how you get Korean women putting their finger up at me. This slideshow's got a whole bunch of different experiments that I've done. When I have to do a picture, there are no rules for taking that picture. There are no rules for how you light it or for anything. As long as it works, as long as that final picture you've got works, how you did it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter that you shot it on 10:8 film. Boring, I don't care. It doesn't really matter that you shot it on the latest digital camera that just came out yesterday. Those things are really unimportant. For me, the most important thing is the final image. How you get there is your own business. But I see a lot of people saying, oh, don't crop. If you crop, it's not a real photograph. Or you're using Photoshop. Photoshop makes it not a real photograph. Etc., etc. And there's a whole world of people who'll tell you what the rules are for taking pictures. And pretty much there aren't any whatsoever. Self-portraits. The reason that I do self-portraits is 51% vanity and ego, and 49% there was no one else to take a picture of that day. There's a lot of pictures of me and a lot of pictures of the cat. Because as you all know, it can be really difficult when you've got an idea to get someone to be in the picture for you. I know my face really well, which is kind of useful because I can straighten my nose up a little bit later and just make myself look a bit tidier than I normally am. Staircase in my hallway. Staircase in my hallway. Cameras that I use are generally relatively cheap, off the shelf, nothing special. I don't think cameras are particularly important. I can see people getting obsessed about this lens and that lens, but for me that's not really the case. I'm more than happy to use whatever camera's around, with the exception of an iPhone, which I find incredibly difficult to use. I'm not sure why, it just feels awkward in my hands. I've seen some nice results, but I find it difficult myself to use a camera phone. Cars. I don't find those cars, they find me. I'll be walking down the street and then a car will go, ooh, look at me, take a picture. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. That's always been a really popular picture. Can we go back to that one for a second, Connor? That one. I actually sold one of these to a member of the audience this evening. I'm proper chuffed. Thank you for that, sir. This picture, clearly it's Cuba. But I was in Cuba with a friend of mine, John Gladdy, who's floating about somewhere, or he could be asleep, I'm not sure. And we went to Cuba and to a few other places. From Havana to other places on the island. And I can remember we were on the 5th floor. There was a balcony, a 5th floor balcony, and I can remember jokingly saying to him, I'm going to throw myself off the balcony, there's nothing to take pictures of here, it's all just a big cliche. And I kind of leant over and I was like, because this had just come to pick up somebody else. There's like 8 people in a car going to work. And do you know that feeling when you're shooting and you're just praying to yourself, please be the right exposure, please be the right f-stop, don't be blurred, please don't be at 10,000 ASA, and you're just almost afraid to look. Well, that one came out, I was really happy with the way that came out, but I had very little to do with it. I just happened to be there. And I like the way, because it's so high up, that this looks so thin and crushed. And she had a cigarette and a ring, and she'd done her nails for me as well. It was, it was a dream come true. Oh, F, that's it. You want me to press F?
No, it's fine, it's going there.
Okay. All these are parts of cars, bits and pieces. There's something about cars that I love. I think they've got great shapes. Some of them are really sexy. Some of them look really strong. I don't have a driving license. I don't. But I do appreciate how beautiful a car can be. And as I said, because I work for myself and I can shoot whatever I want, that's what I'm allowing myself to do now. Not just shoot one thing. It's not just people in the street. It's not just portraits. There's other things all around us. And there's ways in which I test myself as well. There was a point where I thought that cats and kittens were really naff. So I tried really hard to get good cat shots. And it worked. I managed to get a few cat shots. Children, the most incredible monsters on the planet. I test myself to see if I can get a picture from children, because it's hard. They rule everything. They're in charge of, taking whatever they allow you to do. Then that happens. You can't bully children around. I try to push my sense of what works and what doesn't. The things that I think work in a photograph now are very different from things I thought worked in a photograph 10 years ago. 10 years before that, I had completely different feelings about photography. And at 16, when I very first started, I didn't really know anything about it, but I knew it looked like a lot of fun. I've been doing it now for 6 years maybe. For a long time I've been doing it. And what I'm discovering is how slow my progress is in terms of improvement. I have a habit sometimes when I'm nervous of repeating a shot. If I have to do a portrait and it's not working out for me, I have a few little tricks that I keep in my pocket that will get me out of shit. And they work really well, but it's not me moving forward. It's not me becoming a better photographer. All I want is to be a better photographer. I'm not interested in working for different clients and being a professional photographer. I don't have what it takes to be a professional photographer. If you want to be a professional photographer, it's a lot more than pressing the shutter. A lot more than pressing the shutter. I only like this pressing the shutter bit. That and then on the computer, that's when I'm happy. I'm not very good at invoicing. I'm not very good at staying on top of things that need to be done. I'm too busy playing with my cameras. Because photography is so important to me, I'm really reluctant to do anything that's going to spoil it. And what I always discover is whenever I shoot projects for other people, halfway through I say to myself, you said you were never going to do this again. Because it's not my picture, it's half somebody else's picture. And I'm terrible at what did they used to call it at school? Doesn't mix well with others. And I don't particularly. Flowers. The most difficult monsters in the world to shoot if you want to make them look interesting. A lot of people take pictures of perfect flowers, which is fine. Robert Mapplethorpe did it, loads of other people do it. I prefer flowers that are a bit like hands or old faces. Just because it's starting to wilt a little bit doesn't necessarily mean that it's to be thrown away. And that I particularly liked. It was like a DNA coil. Flowers, once again, was a test for me. What can you do with flowers and make them look more interesting or better than they already do? And you're starting with something that's perfect. It's really hard to improve on perfect. So I generally work with flowers like this is a trash lily, because I found it in the trash. Dying rose, but I still think it looks good. I prefer the rose looking like that. Photographing perfect plants is not, I just don't know what to do with them. Things like that. I was inside a steamy shop window. One frame made my day. And I still continue to photograph flowers as a kind of anger management. If I go out of the house and I'm bumping into people or I'm not paying attention or I just feel angry, there's a little garden off Portobello Road where I go and photograph the flowers. And after half an hour of photographing flowers, I feel quite good about myself. This particular place that I go has a lot of guys kind of sitting on benches drinking and really odd groups of people around these gardens. But it's really good for me to go there and shoot. What you're seeing now is a set of experiments that I did with a guy called Mark Michelson in New York. And basically, it was an accident that made it happen. He delivered a bunch of pictures to me, but because they were folded in a particular way, there was the top of one head and the bottom of another. So we decided to work on it and see what happened. And that's what happened. A lot of time is spent trying to make things work, trying to pull something out of a shot that didn't do what you wanted it to do on the day. If I take a picture on a particular day and I get home and I look at the pictures, it's in my head what I wanted, and if the pictures don't give me what I want, I hate them. If I wait for a month and look at the same pictures again, I've completely forgotten what I was trying to achieve, which gives me the freedom to be able to pick whichever one I want to start working on. But because it's such an instant medium, I've been known to press the shutter and actually have it online within kind of 2 minutes. Looking for love in all the wrong places, basically. Or like my picture, it's really good, like it. Connor, have we got another? No? Cool. Then I guess we'll just...
You can scroll back through it if you want to reference anything. Put it all down.
Okay, enough anyway. Enough, I've seen them too many times. Now I'm in a position where my main concern in life is getting better at what I do. Not necessarily getting better at the technical side of photography, but getting better in how I see things. Sometimes I can be very close-minded and go, oh, there's not a picture there, or there's not a picture there, or I could never get a picture out of him, or never get a picture out of her. And I have a habit of kind of giving up too quickly, going, no, it won't work. And 9 times out of 10 when I shoot it, I'm forced to make it work. And it's a very strange feeling, that kind of, if I don't make this work, I'm going to be in loads of trouble. And portraits are a strange one, because as much as people come to me and say, Brett, will you do a portrait for me? I love your freaky pictures. It's kind of like, yeah, all right, but you know what kind of pictures I do, right? Like, yeah, do a portrait. I did a portrait of a guy who came around to see me, and he was the son of a very famous painter. And he came round, and I took pictures of him, and I did what I thought was a fantastic shot of him. And he sent me a message the next day saying, I've never felt so ugly in my life. I've never had one of those before. I thought that was great. I've never felt so ugly in my life. It was like a real achievement. It wasn't kind of like, oh, can you get rid of that spot? But that kind of, that sort of made me happy. I'm surrounded by a lot of people who are taking photographs. The majority of my friends, I guess it's like doctors and nurses, but a lot of my friends are taking photographs. And now that you can take a picture and you can put it up, and depending on how many people follow you, people can be looking at your work all over the world really, really quickly. And as much as I like to throw things up as quickly as I can, I think there's a lesson to be learned in not posting things straight away. Because what tends to happen to me is I'll do a picture of something and I think this is the best picture that I've ever done. This is fantastic, this picture. I'm going to put it up. And then you put it up, and the second it goes live, you find all the things that are wrong with it. Instantly. It's not live, everything looks perfect to me. Everything's in the right place, no brush marks, nothing. As soon as it goes live, and sometimes when I put things up that quickly, I'll look the next day at what had been shot, and I'd find much better pictures. But it's a bit too late, because I've already put one up from that section. Do I want to put another one up? No, not really. Do I want to swap them? I could do. The hard part of doing portraits for me is to find that line between retaining a person's dignity and still managing to get what I want out of the picture. It's interesting the way people will say, just do the pictures like you normally do, just do a normal picture of me. And I'll take the picture, and then is my chin really, really that broad? Is my nose not straight? Is my and it's kind of like, you asked me for what to give you what I do, and now you want something completely different. And it happens very, very often. People love the idea of having an odd portrait, but the reality of it can very often go the wrong way. Let me see, let's put this On F, yeah?
What do you want to do? Make it full screen?
Yeah.
Do you want to go back to the beginning?
Yeah. She was a fantastic lady. She was in a coffee shop. She looked like Whistler's mother. These were boxers in Brazil. I think there's a thread, now that I can do what I want, I think there's a thread that goes through my pictures, but I'm not exactly sure what it is. I try as hard as I can to give people dignity. I'm not really into photographing people who look like they're on their last legs. I'm sure somebody would find it interesting, but for me, I don't really like doing it. Finding people to photograph is the hardest part at the moment. People to shoot in the street, there's plenty. There's plenty of guys like him on my street. But getting people that you want to bring into your house and do portraits of, spend time with, which you really need to do in order to get a good portrait out of somebody. I'm finding it quite hard. I've shot almost everybody in my neighbourhood that I want to shoot. And I think it's time for me to start travelling again a little bit. This is Jerusalem, a very weird place. New York, Chinese New Year. I have a camera with me all the time. I've had a camera with me every day since I got back into photography, which was in 2004, I think it was. I went through Dubai airport with my mother, and her husband had just died, which she was really happy about because she had loads of money. And I had a little crappy point and shoot with me. And I went in Dubai airport, you can buy a Ferrari or a Learjet or anything you want. It's a really weird place. And I went into a shop looking at cameras, and I found the sexiest looking camera I'd ever seen in my life. It was a Sony 828 with a bendy body. My mum bought it for me. She was like, oh, get it, go on, it's all right, we've got plenty of money. And I haven't put down a camera since. Every single day that I go out, I've got a camera. To the extent that people actually say, you know, where's your camera? And it's usually in my pocket or somewhere. I don't think saying I've got one on my telephone is a good enough answer, really. You know, that doesn't count as carrying a camera around. But what I find is that I practice a lot. Thanks to digital and the fact that it costs absolutely nothing, I find that I'm practicing a lot when I'm walking down the street. I'll look at the lid of a dustbin and go, can I get that one? Click, and then kind of have a look. It's like, no, you missed it completely. And I'll just shoot from the hip and try and get a little bit better every time I do it. I don't have any plans or there's nothing I particularly want to do with my pictures, because my pictures were just meant to be a bit of fun. It was me picking up a camera again. And I started putting my pictures up on the internet, which I found completely addictive. Putting pictures up so quickly and getting someone to go, oh yeah, that picture's all right, or I hate your pictures, or whatever it was that people said. And bit by bit, it got to a point where people were saying, can I buy a print? And it was kind of like, yeah, but how much do you charge for a print? What does a print cost? And most of the money that I get now comes from selling prints of various different sizes. I'm quite picky about how I like prints to look. And I've got a guy who prints for me who I've known for a long time, and he's incredibly good at turning my really shitty files into something that can be printed. I can't remember, I didn't change from JPEGs till about 2006 because I was scared of RAW. RAW what is it? And I'm not very good at kind of asking people to explain stuff to me. I'll try and find out on the internet, and if I don't understand it, it's like, ooh. Raw? What's a raw? But I did eventually discover what it was, and I found it very handy. But I also like it. I set my camera always to RAW and JPEG. So I'll have the camera on black and white. So I got a black and white JPEG, and then I've got a color file, RAW file with all the stuff in if I need it. If I can get something that comes straight out of the camera without having to go to the RAW file, I'm really pleased with myself. I feel quite kind of chuffed. I don't need your RAW. I get spot on exposures. But now I'm much more conscious of people wanting to buy prints or people wanting to use pictures for different things. Initially, I'd take a picture, I'd make the file as small as I could make it so that it would get up on the internet quicker. So the internet is full of 500 meg files, or kind of one just tiny little files. And I'm not very good at digital housekeeping. In fact, I'm terrible at digital housekeeping, which means that I can never find a picture that I'm looking for. And the only pictures people want are the ones that I can't find the file of. I have a little mountain of hard drives that's got everything in there. I delete very little because I can go back and find something to work with that I missed first time round. But I think it's gone past the point now of me being able to tidy up my files. It's too mammoth a job, really. I've been taking digital pictures since 2004 or something, and they're just everywhere. I wish there was a way that I could make it easier for myself, but it's kind of gone a bit too far on that front. I'm going to shut up now for a minute. And does anybody have a question? Don't all shout at once.
I think you mentioned that you like to experiment with lighting, and I just wondered, can you give us an example of a recent experiment that you got excited about?
Yeah, I can. It was a project that I was doing with Connor, where we used a projector, a video projector, and on the wall we projected, it was like a New York street, wasn't it? Hong Kong. It was a Hong Kong street that was out of focus. And I was lit in blue about 6 feet away from the background. I was lit in blue, but the blue was coming from a Manfrotto LED light, where you can turn the volume up and down to the way that you want it to be. But it was like a blue face, a red background, and something was missing, and we couldn't work out what was missing in the picture. And then, of course, a cigarette. If I'm lighting a cigarette, then we've got blue, red, blue. We have depth within the picture. And depth in a picture is something that I always forget about. I always forget about what's behind the thing I'm photographing. And then afterwards, it's like, oh God, if I'd moved just an inch that way, that would be so much better. But what it was it was a portrait that Connor did of me. And the lighting was a lot of fun to do. We kept kind of basically getting lost as far as getting our exposures right, the distance, the balance of this and of that. But eventually it turned out really well. And we have more projects or more shoots that we want to do using some of the same materials that we used before. But I've got a very small space in which to shoot, so it's only going to be kind of 3/4 or head and shoulders, but it's enough. Lights that we've built, we got these really thin strip lights, and we cut a hole in a piece of black card and sellotape these really thin fluorescent tubes, but I think they go inside wardrobes or cupboards or something. And then with the camera through there, the lines around made for, it looked really good, and luckily it was an album cover, so I was quite pleased that that actually worked. But yeah, playing with lights, experimenting with lights, building lights. Nothing that I build is ever going to be any different than something you could buy from the shop, but somehow I feel a little bit smarter than making it myself. Look, I make this. Anybody else got a question?
I've got a question. Sorry. Okay, sorry. You go first, Julia.
So on what occasion do you find yourself using a film camera?
Film as in film?
Yeah.
Well, now, basically never.
You don't find a difference in quality?
Not to the extent that I want to spend that much money,
Fair enough.
really, you know. I think the difference between a well-exposed digital frame and film, there's very little between them. There's a tiny nuance of difference, but I was developing film and had my hands up to my elbows in freezing cold water for years on end as an assistant.
Mm-hmm.
So to move away from getting wet when I'm trying to do it's great. I think if you're a big fan of film, maybe you should, use Photoshop with your right hand and keep your left hand in a bucket of iced water. just so it kind of feels like you're being modern.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I've got a question. Can you talk a little bit about portraiture and architecture? So I would say, at least from this presentation, the majority of the images are portraits, yeah. But when you photograph architecture, I just can't help thinking that there are parallels. The way you work with lines, shadows. Sometimes I've got the feeling, almost as if you see a portrait in the architecture, almost
Sometimes.
an element of architecture in the portrait.
Yeah, sometimes that happens. Architecture is another one of the tests that I give myself. Because it's very easy to take a portrait of a beautiful woman sitting on a stool in the sunlight. An idiot, a monkey, could get a good picture out of that. Things that I find really difficult to photograph, things that I don't have the technical knowledge to photograph well, like buildings, I really enjoy the challenge. And I live in a neighbourhood that's got some great buildings. I live next to Trellick Tower, which is a great building to photograph if you can just about get it right. From my living room window and my bedroom window, you can see Grenfell Tower, literally from my window. And there was a picture of Grenfell Tower came up there from about 2 years ago. And it's kind of quite odd that it's disappeared. It's almost like a tooth being pulled out of the skyline. The skyline's so distinctive from the window that I look out of that they'll knock that down and it'll be like a missing tooth. There'll be a gap where things were. This was in a favela in Rio de Janeiro. I went to Rio de Janeiro to photograph the Homeless Persons World Cup. And they managed to get homeless people from all the way around the world and put them in an expensive hotel in Rio, and yes, the Brazilians won. But the guy who lived up here in the favela was a trumpet player, and he invited us to stay for the night, and it was absolutely brilliant. It was really good fun up there. Lots of people dancing, lots of people playing jazz instruments, and it was good fun. That was shot on a little Lumix, the LX5 I think it was, if anybody knows what that is. It's a little point and shoot camera. And the quality came out quite well, and I was very surprised at the difference in colour temperature as well. I didn't think it would be that strong, but it was. Photographing buildings has changed over the past 5 years in a way that I don't want to follow. I'm not really a big fan of drones. I know if I bought a drone I would crash it, or I would lose it, or some child would have their head decapitated because of my ignorance. But if you do have a drone, the opportunities for photographing buildings become huge. And I'd like to see buildings from that angle, but I don't want to be flying the drone myself. I have some software that makes buildings stand up straight. It's relatively ugly and looks completely wrong. But I don't have a tilt shift lens that I would use if I was doing architecture. And quite honestly, I don't go out looking for a building. I don't go out of my house looking for anything. There's a particular kind of 500-meter walk that I'll do to my coffee shop. And then from there, I have absolutely no plans. If I start speaking to somebody in the queue, maybe I'll drag them outside and take a photograph. Somebody might tell me about something that's going on. Somebody could be going to the Natural History Museum. Do you want to come? Yeah, okay, why not? Let's do it. I find whenever people give me opportunities to take photographs, and I say yes, I'm always surprised at how successful those things are. I'm generally the sort of person, I can't be bothered. No, I can't be bothered. It's too cold, it's too hot. And when I do get dragged out of the house by my friends to shoot something completely different, the adrenaline starts running, and it's kind of, I have to get a picture out of this. How am I going to get a picture out of this? What am I going to do? What can I add to this building? Or what can I take away from this building that'll give it any more strength? The only thing that ever changes with the building is where the sun hits it. So finding the best place on the building where the sun's going to hit it is kind of where you'd start. But I don't go out looking for buildings. If I see one that works, I'll shoot it. But I don't put a lot of faith into coming home and having an architecture picture. It's only once they are at home and I look at them compared to what was next to it, it's like, ooh, can I make anything out of that? I'm not really sure. A lot of people go out and they know exactly what they want to take photographs of. They know exactly what it is. They're in the street, so they want a tramp. They're in the street, so they want Japanese tourists doing that, or whatever, whatever it is. They've got an idea of what they want when they go out. And when I very first got into photography, when we used to call them test shots. The photographer would let you use the studio at night to do a photograph. The first one that I did was a recreation of The Last Supper. Remember, this is my first test in the studio. And instead of it just being a girl on a stool, it was 12, 13 people, all with rockabilly haircuts, all sitting around a table with the, where it looks like Jesus is DJing. That kind of and that was the first one, and quite honestly, it was a total and complete fuck up. But I thought it would work. And then the next one I did was a nun with holes in the palms of her hands there. Because something told me that if you do religious subjects, it's masterful. Hey, listen, I'm 17, 18 years old. I haven't got a clue. So I thought maybe a bit of stigmata. There's not enough stigmata around these days. So I got a makeup artist to make holes in this girl's hands. The worst thing about it is that she'd only just started building her portfolio. And I think she thought she was going to get something that might be useful. And she kind of didn't really, because I wanted dark under her eyes. I wanted her to be like that. So that was how studio kind of work kind of went with me. I thought, if I can think it, I can shoot it. Now I know that's not true. But I kind of believed then that if I come up with this great mad idea and do it, everyone's going to go, wow. And people don't go, wow. They're going to go, oh, yeah, all right, whatever. But I was so excited about being able to do something in a studio with all the lights. And kind of bit by bit, everything that I did turned more and more fashiony, more and more beauty. And I went off to Japan when I was 22 to do a fashion show. They wanted London boys in a fashion show. It was a 2-week visa and you got paid $1,000. So I was like, yeah, I'll go, I'll do it. And so I'd been taking SX70s with my advance money. I bought an SX70 camera in the building where the hotel was. That's how long ago it was. They sold them then. And I bought one and I got 10 packs of film and I photographed everybody on Polaroid because I like Polaroid for the same reason I like digital. You can see it straight away. If you were asking me difference between Polaroid and digital, huge difference. But with film, no. Polaroids, you can't get Polaroid digitally. You can't get that texture. You can't get that feel. With Polaroids. And Polaroids were basically what I shot most of, as often as possible. They used to have a film called Polar Pan, which was a 35mm canister of film. Put it in the camera, you shoot it, you roll it back, you take it out, and you put it into a little magic Polaroid box. Turn a wheel, and you have 24 slides in 6 minutes. That was great. That was perfect, because I was always sure when I was shooting that I was going to fuck something up. I've made some mistake on the exposure, I know I have. It doesn't seem right. But Polaroids were a really big thing for me. And somebody saw the Polaroids in Japan and said, will you stay and do a job? It's £4,000 and it's the week after next. And I was like, yeah, all right. And I ended up living there for 5 years. And that period I was doing fashion and beauty and I enjoyed it. It was fun. There's a lot of fun to be had because everybody else takes care of the hard work. All you have to do is just take the picture. And you don't even have to pay tax in the normal way in Japan. They give you £2,000 and then they give you a bill for £500. So you give them the £500 back, stamp. It's done. You've paid your tax and you've got your money. Japan was brilliant for that. After I got to a point where I couldn't shoot fashion and advertising anymore, sometimes it's been written that I had a problem morally with fashion and advertising, and that's not true. I don't have a moral problem with it. I just don't particularly want to be part of. I don't want photography. I don't want anything to get into my photography. I don't want anything to get in the way of what I'm doing. I don't want to toe the line particularly. Where was I?
Live P.
Sorry?
No, just joking.
Yeah, what was I saying? We went from
Japan, we went from Japan.
Right.
You didn't have a moral problem.
Yeah. That was it. Yeah, it was written in an interview somewhere that I had I had a moral problem with fashion advertising. I have a moral problem with me using my work to sell other people's shit. That's kind of it, really. It's not that, it's a personal thing, really. And I think if you're going to get into fashion and advertising and you're going to do that sort of work, there's a lot of things that you need to do in order to keep that thing rolling. And one of them is being on top of your business, one of them is being on top of your agent, one of them, there's a whole bunch of things that you need to do, and photography becomes about 10% of it. And that's why I found it hard. It was like, the money's great, but I'm not doing anything that I particularly like. But I never believed at that point that I could take a real photograph. I knew I could take a fashion picture, I knew I could do a beauty picture, but could I do that stuff that people do in the street? Can I do those weird portraits that people do? Didn't think I'd ever be able to do it. By having a break from photography and doing completely different things, when I got my digital camera, all of the times I'd wished I had a camera and wished I hadn't given up photography, all came rushing back to me as soon as I got this digital. It was just magic. It's like shooting everything everywhere. And I think if it wasn't for digital and it wasn't for the ability to get the pictures up to a lot of people as quickly as possible, I don't think I'd be taking pictures. Really, before the internet, before digital, you spent a fortune and you had a print in an envelope, and the people who saw it were the people you showed it to. There wasn't a way of lots of people seeing your stuff, and now that's possible. And like I said, I'm a real, looking for love in all the wrong places. I love it when I put up a picture and people go, "Oh, you're great! Oh, you're great!" I pretend that I find it annoying and kind of brush it off. But the truth is that I kind of like it, really. But hey, you can always tell when I'm feeling lonely. There'll be about 3 pictures go up that night. So if you see me 3 or more, just get in touch and make sure that I'm not feeling suicidal or anything. Anybody else got a question?
Yeah, I got a question.
John.
Okay, so you've talked loads about how you take pictures, where you get pictures, what you do with pictures. But from where I am, the most important thing about photography is the image itself.
Mm-hmm.
And everything stands or falls on whether that's a good image. How do you know what's a good image and what isn't? Because it's all at the end of the day, photography is about the image. How do you know when it's a good picture, and how do you know when it's not?
I know it's a good picture when I feel like I want to shit. I'll look at the picture and it'll be like,
So that could be bad sushi.
I'll look at the picture and I'll get butterflies in my stomach because I might have one, I might have got a picture. And for me, getting a picture is a really big deal.
Yes, but what I'm saying is that's what you do. What makes a picture and a non-picture a non-picture? Because people that are new, that are starting to take pictures, have to learn how to see what a picture is. How do you know when you look at that, as opposed to the other 12 frames, 15 frames that we shot that night? Which one, and that, they're all super strong images, but how do you know that that's a picture?
I don't. I have an inkling, I have an idea that might be a good picture, that it might work. But I'm just never really 100% sure.
Yeah, but that's artistic doubt. I mean, stop it on any frame, and they're all incredibly well balanced pictures, and they're very powerful. How do you know that is as regards to looking at a picture that you might see on Flickr that within the best will in the world is just not any good?
Yeah.
What is that difference?
But doesn't the quality of a picture also depend on the context? So I mean, I'm sure I'm sure it does, let's say even a picture that has a completely crap composition can be super short if it's the perfect memory for you, you know what I mean? So it's really difficult to kind of say what is a good or a bad picture. I think you need to define the context. So the question is kind of, what is your context? How does your...
Isn't it like when
does
you
your
go
mind-
to a museum and you see something and you can't explain what hits you about the image, but there's something that obviously affects you?
Emotional
response. Yes, but maybe like when you're editing a
Positive
picture, you test around, you test the props, you see what hits you. Maybe it's somebody's eyes, maybe it's something in their expression, and you think, that's what I'm feeling. Like I'm feeling this is the image now.
Because to your point, everybody in here on their phone probably has a picture of their friend or their kids or someone kind of being goofing around eating a burger, which they really like. But you put it in that slideshow, it will jar out immediately because it works on a different level. These are working as pictures, as photographs. The others are working as memory triggers for a subjective event.
I think with me, for not this section particularly, but there is no context to my work. There is no reason or rhyme, there's no thread that explains.
I don't believe you. All of your work is artistically superb. Therefore, there has to be something that you see to be able to get them to that. You don't put shit out.
I get what John's saying. Don't you think it's when...
That's part of it.
We won't know, because we have to between the two of them now.
But what I'm saying is, if you want to take good pictures, you have to learn how to see also.
But isn't it when the elements come together? So like the picture that you took in Cuba, from up in the hotel, and the timing, it was the colour of the car, the woman's fingernails, the ring, the cigarette. You knew that all those elements had just come together in that one moment, and you thought...
I didn't know.
No.
I didn't know. I knew there was something down there.
But when you saw the image, you must have been like, everything just clicked in that one frame, and that's what made it a good picture.
On that trip, this, by the way, this is not a nutter that's just wandered in from the street.
But it might also be that.
Yeah. John was with me on the trip to Cuba. I had no idea that I'd got anything as far as that blue car goes, but I just wished I had. And then when I went through the pictures and had a little look, that was the moment where I thought, fuck, I wish I'd shot raw. And he'd been trying to get me to shoot raw for ages. He's like, come on, don't be a wuss. Shoot raw. It's like, I don't know, it's all a bit funny. But I wish that I had shot raw on that trip now. Because one of the things that I do is I'm notorious for cropping in a bit more, cropping in a bit more, and cropping in a little bit more. So the size of the sensor that I'm working with is really relevant when it comes to me cutting out just someone's head. So I crop hugely. And I think because I crop hugely, I can craft a picture and balance it into a manner that I can kind of stand back and go, yeah, that works. I'm never 100% sure if it works or not, but I've been doing it for a long time. And I think I know the difference between a crap one and a good one.
Isn't I have to select from lots of music to what I do, and isn't it something to do with the confidence of your choice? Because you've got thousands of images and you go, that's the one, and that's because you've got confidence in your choice. You like it. You don't care whether other people like it or not. You like it, and I kind of think, well, I'm a pretty average guy. If I like it, there's going to be other people that like it, and I select something on that basis, and I don't care what's in fashion or in trend or what's gone before. I pick it because so the same criteria applies when you're looking through to which one do you put. Say, yeah, I like that, and this is what I'm offering up. Is that what makes a good picture? The fact that you like it.
To a degree, yeah, I do. You know, I crop and I shift things around, and I increase contrast, and I kind of craft a file into what I want it to be. If that file has got all of the elements in it that I'm going to need, then I can make something happen with it. What actually makes a good picture, I'm really not sure. But I know when I look at other people's pictures, if I wished I'd taken it, it's a good picture. And that happens quite often. I have a big collection of pictures that I didn't take that kind of piss me right off. But they're great pictures, really good, strong pictures from the last 100 years. Anybody else got a question?
Do you find
Hello?
Hello. Do you find yourself already imagining how you're going to edit the photo when you look over it in the narrowing down session? Or
no, generally, if there's a picture to be had, I saw it before I pressed the shutter.
okay.
Then I'll look at maybe one or two frames that I took of that particular person. If it's not so much what's in the picture, it's what's not in the picture that's important. I'm not quite sure whether this slideshow makes it obvious, but you won't see a Tesco's bag. You won't see headphones from a Walkman or an iPhone. You won't see a label for Nike or Prada.
No context.
I try and take away as much as I can within a picture that's going to date it. I still want my pictures to look as simple and strong in 20 years. So I don't want anything that says right now, it was done today or yesterday. I don't want it to have a date on it particularly. I don't want it to have a time placed to it. That could have been taken in the 20s, that could have been taken in the 30s.
Do you also think it's a matter of getting better at finding the decisive moment with experience? Or?
I don't really get into the decisive moment that much because I'm not kind of quick enough.
Okay.
Really, I mean, I'd love to be able to, but I'm, there's a couple, but I'm just not that quick when I'm shooting. But when I do think that I've got a frame, I do think, what am I going to do with this? What am I going to do with this frame? How am I going to work it? But as soon as I've got a frame on the camera that I like, I've got it on lock. I'm not shooting anymore today. Camera's under my arm. I just want to get home, stick it in the computer, and have a look. And then you put it in the computer and you have a look, and it's fucking out of focus. You know what I mean? Or there's some stupid thing that you don't want there. And I'm not really a big fan of removing with Photoshop different things that are in the picture. Not because I think it's morally, artistically wrong. I'm just not very good. Basically, and I'm far too lazy to learn how to do that stuff. Anybody else?
How much time do you spend editing your images in Photoshop? Do you say, is that a very long process, or is it rather rough and loose?
10 minutes?
10 minutes, so relatively quickly.
Yeah, 10 minutes is about... If it takes me longer than 10 minutes to work on a picture in Photoshop, then it wasn't worth it anyway. 10 minutes of tidying up, that's acceptable to me. But 3/4 of an hour trying to make a picture into something else or work in a different way, I know if it's not working straight away, it's not going to work. And there's many a night I've been up to 2 or 3 in the morning trying to make this picture work. It's got to work, it's got to work. And, you know, sometimes they just don't, no matter what you do. So you just have to take the photograph again if you get the chance, or not really. I generally kind of, when I get home and I look at what I've shot that particular day, I generally go for the 3 frames that I'm excited about, and I forget the rest of the file. So that goes kind of on a hard drive somewhere, and then maybe in a year I'll go, oh look, and I'll find a whole bunch of other stuff that I dismissed.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, exactly. Or not really forgot about, but just dismissed. Yeah, that's a bit shit, it's not very good. Anybody else?
Do you speak to the strangers you photograph, or do they speak to you after you take?
No. I'm way too afraid of strangers. I shoot, like I said, I shoot from the hip quite a lot. And on a good day, I can get heads right in the middle of the frame. On a bad day, I can't. It's quite hard. It's like having an eyeball in your hand. You have to see from down there. And if the camera was down there, then you'd get the buildings that are behind in the roof. So somehow you have to put your brain into your hand to be able to do it. I've been shooting from the hip now for about 16 years, and I'm still as bad as I was before. But sometimes I'll hold the camera up to my chest if I'm walking through a crowd. It's like, oh, I'm just... This is that whole fear of getting caught and getting exposed. You're a paedophile, you took a picture of my child. And it's kind of like, oh, no, call please. Let's go through this one again. And I live right opposite a children's school, primary school. And I'm always waving cameras out of the window, so I'll probably get the primary school kind of, you know, someone will shoot me with a long-range shotgun or something, because I think it was a gun that I had. Anybody else?
What that gentleman said about how do you know, and you know, it's, and you described it about like you felt like you wanted to have a share, but surely looking at your stuff, really for me it's the first time, and I love your beautiful blemishes.
Thank you.
You know, and me looking at your work is the one thing that hasn't been mentioned is the heart, and which will, without us even choosing to believe that we're using our heart to create, it has to be involved in the eye.
It probably is, but I'm so disconnected from my heart that I sort of wouldn't know. Really. But I know that if I put tender loving care into a picture, I'll get something. Once you become so arrogant that, oh yeah, I can just knock it off in a few minutes, yeah, it'll be really easy, done. Then the quality of your work just goes down and down. When John was saying, how do I know that it's a good picture? I think I have the ideal set of pictures in my head that I wish were mine. And I constantly move towards getting those pictures that are in my head. The pictures that some of them are 50 years old, some of them are 100 years old. But
massive knowledge of what came before.
We've got, I don't know, John and I used to share an office in my flat, and we used to buy lots and lots of photography books. And another thing that happened was John, instead of, he went to market, and he came back with market with a camera called a 10D, which is really, really old digital camera. And we were like super, super excited about this digital camera, this 10D. But we couldn't work out why the screen wouldn't, because you couldn't see through the screen. And we assumed that you'd be able to just look at the back of the camera and see the picture, but it was a Canon and it had a pentaprism and a mirror and everything. You only saw the picture after you'd taken the picture. That's how little we knew about digital cameras. Digital cameras then. But I can remember it being a really exciting day. It was really cool. You should have gone to market and bought a cow. But we came back with a camera that was great. We had a lot of fun with that one. And also I had some money coming to me from a death, and I spent almost all of the money beforehand buying every camera I ever wanted. Every camera I ever wanted. There wasn't a piece of kit that we couldn't have. It was like, yeah, let's get one of those. Yeah, let's get one of those. There was a Hasselblad, a digital Hasselblad that turned up. There's all kinds of stuff that turned up. And the thing that was great was it allowed me to completely immerse myself in what equipment people were using. And trying to find out what cameras we liked, what cameras we didn't like. Jack and Chieska over here. Ricoh GRs. They love a Ricoh GR. Me too. Ricoh GRs are, they do the job. We find it hard to find something better that you could put in your pocket than walk around with one of those. And because we had a group of people, Connor as well, this was a couple of summers ago, all basically obsessed with getting a good picture. We'd do photo shoots at my house, so we'd get a couple of models. By models I mean somebody to take a photograph of, not models. And it was generally kind of grizzly looking guy, a beautiful girl, and some annoying kid. And there'd be 6 or 7 of us all taking it in turns, like 10 minutes, go and do the kid for 10 minutes, go and do this for... and the good thing about that was that everybody was kind of teaching everybody else, which was great for me, watching these people who'd had very little experience with cameras and with photography, and just seeing kind of like how quickly you can move forward. And that was a lot of fun. I miss those days. But there you go. But yeah.
So when you gave, maybe going back a little bit, but when you gave up photography, what did you do instead?
When I gave up photography, what did I do instead? One of the things that I did was I joined the Greek Merchant Navy. I was really drunk. And I met this guy who was seeing a hooker friend of mine. He was. Do you want to know the story?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've just done.
Okay. Well, the hooker who saw. I said, I want to go on a boat. I want to go on one of your ships, and I want to take pictures. And it was like, oh yeah, we'll sort it out. We'll sort it out. And nothing happened for about 3 months. And then I got a letter saying if I wanted to join that ship, I had to work and sign a 7-month contract. But I was drunk, so I said yeah. And I ended up going to Ghent in Belgium and got on a huge container ship and sailed from Ghent around the top and back around here across to Brazil. For the first month I cried every night. I couldn't believe what a stupid thing I'd got myself into. Within a month I was much more fit, I was much more happy, and there was something about standing on the deck just as the sun's coming up or going down, you see a few dolphins and that kind of stuff, and it was like, life's actually not that bad, it's kind of alright. And then I'd go down to what's called a wiper, which is the lowest of the low. It's kind of
Usually the little boys in.
yeah. You're just wiping the oil off the floor and having spanners thrown at you by Greeks. But then I got off the ship after being on it for a year in Brazil. Stayed there 4 or 5 years. Took a couple of pictures, but not really. It was only once I came back to this country that I started taking pictures again. And it was just meant to be a little bit of fun. It wasn't meant to end up like this. It was just meant to be a few little pictures that I put up. But then I became more and more obsessed with making my pictures better. Selling them doesn't necessarily kind of excite me, but if I can break through another barrier and get a picture that's very different from what I've done before and be comfortable with it, then that's what I'm aiming for. Because it's too easy to fall into a rhythm of doing the same thing all the time. I used to work for a guy called Peter Lindbergh, a fashion photographer in Paris, and he's taken one photograph in his life and he just repeats it every time. Multi-millionaire, buy his prints for $12,000, but just the same picture every time. Paolo Reversi, Polaroid photographer, 80s. I love him. Same picture. It's just the same picture again and again. And it makes money and clients like it when you can be consistent. I'm the least consistent person that I know. So that world is just not cut out for me.
Gets tedious.
Well, I suppose so, but you know, that's what they say, kind of, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
Yeah.
For me, I just like to keep breaking things. Trying something new, trying to see if I can get away with a new idea. A lot of the time, I'll ask Connor his opinion on a picture because he's generally somewhere around, and it will basically kind of be, meh. Or it'll be, yeah, it's great, that one, I like it. If I get a meh, I kind of have to swallow it. Because he has no reason to say it's good when it's not. Absolutely none. In fact, I think he quite enjoys telling me some of them is shit. But it is good having people that you trust giving their opinion, because you can never really know whether a picture kind of works or not completely. A lot of pictures involve members of my family or friends or a building that's close to my heart. It's not close to your heart. Mm-hmm. Pictures of, my kids have no interest to you whatsoever. Unless I kind of chop one of their heads off, or, do you know what I mean? It's kind of, photographing your own kids and selling it to other people isn't this great? It doesn't work. So you have to take away your personal feelings for the person in the picture, the situation, the day. Oh, that was the day I won £10,000. I love this picture. But no, they're separate things. They're not the same thing. Anybody else?
Just a question. Because you're so shy about doing street photography, that you seem to find your models in the street and then take them home. Surely that's far more difficult.
I kind of feel like I'm going to get arrested or something now. The people who come to my house to be photographed are generally friends. They're generally people that I know, or they're friends of friends who would look particularly good in one of my pictures. This gentleman here came to see me through a friend of a friend, and I think we did quite well that day, didn't we?
Did right, yeah.
So it really depends. It really depends when it comes to people in the street. People in the street I don't invite back to the flat. I like to photograph them from a distance. There's one guy that I really want. He's a black guy, and he's got one eye. And he's really big, really muscly, and he looks like he would bite your head off. But I've been told that he's quite sweet. So I'd love to get a portrait of him, but I am literally too terrified to even kind of say it. It'll happen one day, I'll make it happen. But this guy just looks so amazing. Yeah, people in the street, from the hip, up here, in coffee shops, a sneaky one. I'm just a sneaky I am, I'm just really sneaky. There's two ways in which I gather pictures. There's a kind of the fishing method, where you sit on a corner and you grab stuff that's coming by, or there's kind of the hunting one, where you kind of see something and you follow it until you get what you want. There was a picture that came up of a pair of legs on a staircase. I saw this woman on Portobello Road walking in front of me, and I was like, my God, look at her calves. They're so sculpted. So I kind of followed her for about 100, 200 yards, and there were people behind her and people at the side, and there was no way I was going to get a picture out of it. And suddenly she turned that way and walked up a staircase. And I went, click, click, and then kind of got past. Fortunately, it worked. I got it. And quite a lot of people like that picture. But yeah, sniping, following people around. It's I suppose it sounds a bit pervy, but it's kind of, it's how you get your pictures.
You know the shot of you got a shot where you've done it from the hip with a guy, and he's got that brick building behind it. And I got that framed, and the guy in the frame shot rang me up. He said, we're all really super excited about that picture. Who took it?
Okay. John's the guy who's in the picture.
Was that John in the picture?
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
No.
The one with the shoes opposite the Salvation Army.
No,
he's not talking about that.
There's a back of a guy.
Looks like, looks like
and there's a big building that's covered in.
Oh yeah,
bricks.
yes, that one.
You said I was the only. He says only 8 people who said they liked it.
Yeah.
The guys that framed it rang up. He said, "You want to? That's a brilliant shot. Do you want to know why?" I said, "Yeah, go on." Oh, he rang up because it was an odd size first.
Yeah.
Wanted to know what border I wanted to know. He said, "Because the guy who's out of focus is actually the subject of the shot."
Yeah.
And the thing he said, it's a real. He said they're all super because they're all sort of photographers. The guys that work in the print shop.
Cool.
And he said that's just like. It's a privilege for us to look at that shot, you know.
You're only as good as your last shot.
Yeah.
I think that's really important to remember. You're as good as the last thing you shot. If the last thing you shot was crap, you're crap. Do a good picture, then you can be good for a day. You can't sit on. There's a lot of people I know who did great pictures back in the day. Fuck back in the day. Really? I don't give a shit about your back in the day. I want to know what you photographed yesterday, what you're photographing today. Has anything changed? Have you improved? What can you teach me? That's what I'm interested in. You know, the photographer model of this is completely different. You know, being a professional photographer, I wish you all the best of luck. But there's a lot more of you doing it now than there used to be. So you have to work that much harder to get your pictures worth seeing. Because just having a camera is kind of not enough. Anybody else?
Do you have any favourite contemporary photographers?
Contemporary photographers? No. None at all. I'm kind of not really interested in photographers. I'm into photographs, but photographers, I could care less, really. There's lots of people. My favourite pictures were probably taken before I was born. In terms of kind of contemporary photographers, I'm very wary of kind of looking at that stuff because I'm really easily influenced, incredibly easily influenced. So I can look at your picture that you've done and go, oh, yeah, I really like that one, and find myself a day later doing something almost as similar. You know, oh, shit, that's not your idea. But I forget. I'm very easily influenced by other people's work.
Favourite all-time photographer? My question.
Irving Penn.
He's having a show in Paris.
It's dead.
Exhibit. Exhibit.
Oh, okay.
Beginning of next month, end of this month.
Yeah, Irving Penn, really. The simplicity. You can't get any simpler than his work. And I think photography is very much about taking things out of the picture, not putting too much in it. And there was not a grape in any of his pictures that shouldn't have been there. Everything's in the right place. A lot of people go for Richard Avedon. It's kind of like Beatles and the Rolling Stones. What are you, Irving Penn, or are you Avedon? I'm Irving Penn, I'm afraid.
Do you like Bill Brandt much?
Do I like?
Bill Brandt? He's quite black and white content.
Bill Brandt, the one that got away. I always feel that Bill Brandt deserves deserves a different kind of honour than he gets. There's so many things that Bill Brandt has done that the rest of us copy on a regular basis. And not only did he do the super wide angle bodies and the shapes, which are fantastic, but also he went out in the street and he was brilliant in the street. Really good. You could really feel small towns in Yorkshire at 5 o'clock in the morning. He had a real ability to make you feel, whether you like the pictures or not, there's always something that gives you a bit of an emotion. And I think that's really important. We see so many pictures that they've got to stick out somehow.
I was going to ask, when you pick a subject to photograph, like for example this black guy without an eye, I'm assuming you're receiving an emotion when you see him. Is that the same emotion that you then try to convey in your picture, or does it change?
Generally it changes. Like I had no idea what to expect before I came here. I didn't even know what the room looked like or who would be here. In my head, this was completely different. But now that I'm here, of course it was going to be like this. That makes sense. But in my head, it was a different thing. I think when I have an idea for a picture, I have to be very, very careful with myself because I've become so stubborn about getting it the way that it's supposed to be when I'm missing 100 other angles, 100 other opportunities to make the picture work. So I try not to have an idea of what I want to do. I have an idea of who I want to take a picture of, but what I'm going to do with them is, it really depends on the day. It depends on what kind of a dynamic happens between.
It's hard though, because if you perceive this guy as like scary, you said he could bite someone's head off, and then how would you make him look sweet, like someone else said?
How would I make him look sweet?
It's hard because for you already perceived it.
I've done a one-eyed guy before. I have. I've done a one-eyed guy before, and you really, the best way to do a one-eyed guy, and you want him to like the picture, is reverse the picture before you print it, because the way your face is a certain way because you see it in the mirror. You've never seen your face. It's a good one, trust me. But you've never seen your face. You've just seen an image of it in the mirror. And if you reverse your negative or your file or whatever it is that you're doing, then the person who looks at the picture will see exactly what they see in the mirror. And very often kind of people get photographed and they go, I don't look like that, I don't look like that. It's like, you do. It's like, no, I don't look like that. And because you're used to seeing yourself the other way around in the mirror. So that's kind of my one-eyed guy trick. You're welcome to it.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks for that. That was a fantastic talk. Thank you.